I think actually there's a balance. It should be somewhere in between, probably leaning towards the people side a little bit because they're the connection with your customer. But you have to watch your budget. As the cost of case goes up, the finance team eventually is not going to care what your CSAT score is.
Hello, and welcome to the CX Files podcast. Today's guest is Shaun Struckmann. He is a senior customer support ops leader. Previously, he was the senior manager of customer support ops at Gong, and before that, he was a business operations manager at Salesforce. Shaun started his career on the technical side, and he currently runs a blog, cxsupportops.com, with insights on support ops that you need to read. Shaun, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
So I want to ask a little bit about the start of your career in CX. What were some of the first experiences that you had, and what kind of stood out to you in the beginning?
Oh, let's see. So some of the first things when I started in CX ops was just how much is involved, like how complicated it is, right? I started in Salesforce that probably had hundreds of employees, maybe even 1,000 in their entire CX org, that it had so many different departments. There's knowledge, content, quality, there's workforce management, or there's so many different aspects to support. And in a super large organization like Salesforce, there's teams that run each one of those functions. And I was very surprised that it's not simply just some agent sitting in a room answering questions.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a common thread that I've been picking up on recently is this point that it's not only the thing, but it's all the context around it. It's all the systems and processes. It's all those adjacent functions. Um, I was just having a conversation earlier today about some of the tools in the CX space, and people look at them as like buying this tool and then plugging it in, but it's much more than that, right? It's much more than a single function. It's all of these operations around it, right? Um,
Sure.
can you talk a little bit about CX ops specifically, and what's one of the big lessons maybe from your previous experiences at Gong or at Salesforce with CX ops?
Um, Lessons. So there's a couple. One is that small changes can make a big impact. Making a change in a small company is, you've only got a few people or one person running systems and tools. Making changes on the fly can impact the entire ability for them to take cases, to them to resolve cases, right? That can have a big impact. And uh, so that was surprising, right? You got to be careful on what you make changes to, which is why I talk about like project managers and planning and how important it is that there really has to be more than just one guy running Zendesk platform, right? That's not enough. You have to have the supporting functionality, some of this tracking deliverables, someone that's managing capacity, headcount, workforce management, other things that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I wanted to mention that you have some really nice guitars and picks in the background there. Can you tell us a little bit about your interest in guitars?
Yeah, thanks. I usually have a picture of my guitar wall, so there's a whole list, but I thought it would be better without the filter because my background used to point to it, and then I moved my desk. So I have 9 or 10 different guitars, and I've been collecting since I was a teenager, and it's a very understanding wife and a lot of years collecting. I've been playing since I was a teenager and never really got into a band, so it's really a hobby. And now I think of it as their artwork. So I love collecting and playing,
Nice.
campfire songs and so forth with friends.
Got it. Got it. Do you have a favorite band or favorite guitarist?
Um, I have a couple. It's hard to pick one favorite band, but I am a 80s big hair bands. I like Tesla and Rush,
Nice.
Queensryche, Aerosmith, ACDC, that type of genre.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I wanted to ask again about interests here. Like, what's something that excites you, or that you really love about operations? Yeah,
It's solving problems. I really get excited when someone comes and says, "Here's an issue that needs to be resolved. I don't have any budget or any resources to solve this problem." So you can't just go hire somebody or buy a tool. You really have to figure it out. and that gets to be really exciting. It's the part in us that's solving the puzzle, that's building the model, that's using all of your experience and knowledge to go find unique solutions. Can I write a code? Can I write some code, a script? Is there something within the tool that I can use kind of uniquely that it really wasn't designed for to get the same results? Are there other tools in the company that might give me similar data? And that happens a lot in operations and customer support as well. A lot of unique situations arise. R&D is always releasing new features, new products. The case volume's always growing, new challenges every day. So that part of operations really excites me.
Definitely. Without sharing any specifics that might be sensitive, but are there some specific challenges? I just said specific challenges. Are there some kinds of challenges or some kinds of threads that you worked on previously at Gong or at Salesforce? You could tell us the story a little bit.
Um, yeah, certainly. Like analyzing ticket data is always a challenge. Um, there's a huge amount of important information held in cases, information about the customer, information about the product, information about your documentation and content, and analyzing that information is a struggle. A platform like Zendesk will have these huge JSON export dumps that are 150 megabytes that you can't just upload to ChatGPT and say what's the common trend or what are my top case drivers. Um, so solving that problem has been fun. I found a way to write a Python script to take that data and pull out just the important information, the comments, the subject, the text, and make it more manageable. Upload it to AWS Bedrock and use their AI to analyze the data. Like those type of things are really exciting and fun projects that you kind of find unique solutions when you don't have the money or budget or resources to do. We also had another issue with escalating tickets, like getting AEs or CSMs or other people in the organization to escalate cases is a struggle if they don't have a full license. They usually can't edit a ticket or modify it. So you need to find a way to do that. So I wrote an app. I learned the API in Zendesk and wrote an app so that it could sit on the side of Zendesk and CSMs could escalate tickets. Then eventually we moved that because we wanted AEs that didn't even have access to Zendesk to escalate tickets. And so we built a Slack bot. We used Slack and a Workato app, tied that to Zendesk so that they could just /escalate ticket, and a form would pop up, and then they could enter the problem, the issue, the case number, and escalate the ticket in Zendesk.
Got it. Yeah, I think there's a few great threads I want to pull on here. One of them is this topic of build versus buy. um, and especially in this era of AI coding tools, I think a lot more people are considering what they can build themselves. People with a technical background, but also people with a less technical background. Everybody can kind of do more than they were able to a few years ago. Now, quality of those results with automated AI coding might be debatable. Um, but yeah, what do you think about that overall? And how did you feel about building these kinds of things yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the ultimate decision lies on the desire of the company, the size of the team, the technical skills of the person that's set out. I'm a really technical background, programming experience. So if I think, oh, I can just spend a little time, write some code, build an app, I can do that. Um, but even that, if you have a highly technical person working there that can build that app, you still have to support it. And as your platforms have updates, sometimes your apps need to be updated. Like we know that iPhone app developers are constantly have to update every time an iOS comes out, right? It's the same in the support world. So if you build an app, you better be able to support it. And most people don't think about that. Like here's a one-shot solution. I've solved the problem. 6 months from now, a patch comes out for your ticketing platform. Salesforce updates something in Service Cloud, and your app doesn't work. But now you're too busy on doing something else that you're the only one that knows the code. You're the only one that can fix it, right? So there's some struggle there. I think in a scrappy small organization like the startup like Gong, I could do that, right? It was just me. We're a small enough organization that we could go in and build something. In a larger organization, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have a team of people that support that application, and you're better off probably buying a tool and paying some other vendor to keep it up to date, get some technical support, because when you get busy and the tool breaks, if you don't have the time to fix it, you're going to be in trouble.
Definitely. Definitely. That's interesting. I think almost like my thinking, I guess it depends on the organization and their capabilities. Like you might have a large technical organization and a large non-technical organization, likewise a small technical or non-technical organization. But I think like a larger company um, certainly has the resources to build themselves, um, but maybe they just don't have the kind of company culture of building themselves, where they or just they're not that technical. That's not their core kind of business. What do you think about these other kind of elements of that question?
Yeah, it's certainly an argument that's come up before when we've asked our R&D teams to help us develop tools. We wanted to put a chat widget inside the product itself, and that requires R&D. And there's two camps in R&D that we heard: the product team, the R&D team. The devs are like, yeah, we can just program it here. I'll get John over here to go code it for you. It'll take him, I'll buy him a cup of coffee and we'll get it done. And then the product manager's like, no, buy something, install it, because I'm not managing that. We're not equipped to go support that. That's not our core function, because the CEO is telling us to release these new app specific features, and we want to add new products. We don't want to support your customer support CX little tool that John developed over the weekend at Starbucks. So yeah, there's a thing there that I think your R&D team, they're highly paid. Let them focus on what they're supposed to do, and that's build your product and support your product. There's vendors that will do it probably for a lot cheaper. They've already put the effort into R&D. They'll support you on the back end. They'll manage updates, changes. They're always improving the product, so you're better off going that route.
So would you say that building it yourself is almost like the last option in many cases? If you can buy it and if you have budget, it's better.
I certainly would, yeah, agree with that. I don't know, last option, but yeah, it's low down there because you're taking resources away from the company that should be focused on your primary application, which is your product.
Right,
And the
right.
cost to hire developers, if you wanted them to focus just on that one tool that you developed, the cost of that is, I mean, a vendor that produces that tool gets to spread the cost of that over their 100 customers. You have to pay for the two or three engineers yourself. It's going to be very expensive. And unless you have
Definitely.
some really strict security concerns or something that it just can't be outsourced, then, which, and then, you consider that, but that's the cost of doing business in a very secure environment. But otherwise, let someone else bear the burden of supporting it and developing it.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Yeah, great perspective on that. I think that's really helpful. I want to switch gears a little bit. One of the things that I always like to ask people about, and I like to hear different perspectives on this point, but this idea of balancing the kind of rigorous, logical, kind of data driven decision making. How do we improve efficiency from the numbers, and balancing that with human intuition and human relationships, and a kind of an EQ, right, an emotional sensitivity. Putting a handwritten note in your hotel room when you arrive or something like that. How do you think about balancing kind of data versus emotion, so to speak?
That's an interesting question. I've had many different support leaders over the years, and each one balances that differently, right? There's a balance between employee culture and EQ and efficiency. So one leader will be, I just want to hire the best agents, the most talented. I'm going to treat them well, um, and make them do the best they can, and that leads to usually very high CSAT scores. happy customers. They respond, they speak well, they answer questions, right? But it's very expensive, right? To hire the best talent and keep them happy requires money and investment into your people team. Then there's leaders on the other side of the spectrum that I've had that are all about efficiency. That, the agents are there to answer questions. They should answer as many cases as possible during the day, and whatever we can do to make that faster is important. Let's outsource whatever we can to lower costs. And I think actually there's a balance. It should be somewhere in between, probably leaning towards the people side a little bit because they're the connection with your customer. But you have to watch your budget. As the cost of case goes up, the finance team eventually is not going to care what your CSAT score is. They're going to say there's just not enough funds to support your organization. Your case volume is going to grow. You're not going to be able to hire enough agents at that level fast enough to keep up with that. And you hire good people, they're going to leave to go to other organizations. They're going to get promoted across the organization. And we just had recently at Gong, like 4 of our best senior engineers were promoted to other positions, which great for them, right? They deserved it. Very talented people. But that leaves a gap then that needs to be filled by people. So if you use part of your organization uses the efficiency level and you have BPO and you have outsources that can add at least some volume very quickly, then you've got a good mix.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think it is a mix at some level for every business. And depending on organization, depending on the personalities involved, like you said, I think people will lean on one side or the other more. Um, and different sides of that can make sense for different businesses too, right? If you have a product that's a big ticket item, um, kind of a premium service, of course it makes sense to lean more on premium support and spending more on that naturally. If you're selling, I don't know, toothpaste or something,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
um,
Commodity
it's gonna
consumer based is a different world than B2B
right.
technical SaaS. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on that specifically. I think one of the things you touched on in one of your posts recently was the idea of self-service in a B2B SaaS, and how does that balance with the AEs and the customer success relationships?
Yeah. So AI chat and self service is difficult in a B2B SaaS world for a couple of reasons. The first one is like cases are usually very snowflake, each one is a little different. They require you to investigate logs and to go look at the settings. Um, Not something an AI is particularly good at out of the box. So if I got another, like we talk about developers, you got a team of developers that can go in and build flows. And if the customer asks this, connect to this, search this list, look for this error code, if this error code, right? That can be built, and AI can be a tool to help develop that flow. But you're getting into something so complicated that has to, because as soon as that feature changes, someone's got to go back into that flow, edit the flow because the name of the product changed and that AI conversation you just have the customer isn't valid anymore, right? So many different things that you got to maintain that flow. So it's
Hmm.
very difficult for an AI chatbot to solve cases. It's really good at searching through your vast amount of data and finding something that looks similar. It's really good at understanding what the question is. You can type it in several different ways. You can have misspellings, use bad grammar. And the AI goes, oh, I think I know what they're asking. And so then I can go to your pool of resources and pull up a documentation. But that's really nothing more than enhanced search engine, right? Federated search across platforms, really not
Hmm.
using AI to deflect tickets. So then customers get frustrated. They're like, I have a search bar, I have documentation. If I ask your AI chatbot a question, I expect either A, to come up with some unique answer because it's so smart and AI powered, or you're going to get me to an agent right away. And then I get to talk to a live agent. They bypass the whole ticket process. And so if you don't have AI agents behind the scenes ready to go talk live with the customer, or you're just trying to pull from documentation, you're better off just leaving the search and not wasting the customer's time.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So you know, at this point about separating needs, and kind of giving people the kind of help that they want, right? So if a customer wants, they essentially have a search need, right? It's like, how do I reset my password? It's something that's relatively straightforward. a search result is basically what they're looking for, and maybe that feels like talking to a chatbot, but essentially, it's searching the knowledge base and returning a kind of templated answer, right? Um, what do you think about that? Like that nuance of like search versus chat?
Yeah, in a consumer environment, like we say, commodity consumer, your airlines and your insurance agencies, I want to know something about my account. I have a question about something, right? They're not something hasn't really broken as much. There's not a technical issue that someone needs to go investigate as much as, maybe why my account failed, where my credit card didn't go through. So there's a lot of value in using AI to go understand what they're looking for. I need to know what my routing number is. I need to know what time my flight is, right? I can go to a database, and then AI really gives me the ability to let customers just type in any way they want in a human interaction. They don't have to select from a list what they're thinking, because that's the old days when we used to build contact centers was the IVR tree, right? Press one if you have this, press two, right? That was a nightmare. So with the chatbot in a web page and some really good AI behind it, I could just type what I exactly want, and then it can go find that automatically without human intervention. And that's completely different when you're talking about a technical solution in a B2B SaaS world, right? There's something's broken, there's a bug, I don't know how to use something. And so they want an answer from somebody. They want a human to go help them, because the level of capability of the customer in a B2B SaaS is usually a little higher than an average consumer. My cell phone doesn't
Right.
work. Grandpa doesn't know how to even use the keypads. But in a B2B SaaS, they're using the tool every day. They're in the tool. They understand it. They've probably gone through training, right? There's some certifications. Maybe, they understand it. So if they have to reach out to support, it's probably because it's not already in the documentation on how to solve it. That's the first place they go. No one really wants to open a ticket. No one wants to talk to anybody. If they could solve it themselves, they will. They'll Google it. That's the first thing everyone does today. Google, if they can't find an answer, darn, I have to go open a case. And if they see a chat bot, they're like, okay, at least this will be fast. I'll go talk to a live agent and have somebody answer the question. Then they find out, well, there's not really a live agent. It's just AI. And all he's doing is spewing the documentation that I just spent the last hour reviewing.
Yeah, and that's such a good point too about like, we build all these systems, we prepare all these tools, and sometimes people just want to talk to an agent, but also sometimes they've already done their homework, they've already done the research, and if they come in and they get the sense that it's what's the word I'm looking for? Um, it's dismissive, right? It's dismissive to say, "Oh yeah, just talk to our chatbot, right? It's going to solve all your problems." And then here is the same article that you just Googled, right?
Exactly.
Um,
It's insulting.
that's a terrible
It's
feeling,
wasting their
right?
time too. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so one of the topics here around, kind of having a good customer experience, having a good user experience with AI is, the knowledge base, right? It's the AI depends on high quality data, garbage in, garbage out. Um, and what are your thoughts on the kind of the pressure on knowledge management in this current landscape?
Oh yeah, there should be a lot of pressure. That's a very good point. I mean, you have the ability now very quickly, almost instantly, to know what your top case drivers are. What is causing your customer the most pain? You can see it in the case volume for these cases. You have access to vast amounts of information to go present to not only your content team but also R&D. Like, fix these UI features first because they're causing the most pain. And your content team is, um, here are the top issues that if you wrote an article, an FAQ, or a troubleshooting guide, would deflect 10% of our cases. And you have a team of people that are super experts in how to do that, right? Your agents, your senior agents should be helping content teams write that information. Here's how I troubleshoot it. Here's how to word it. And then your content team is adding your company tone and creating the, accuracy and grammar right. But you've got the technical resources to do it. So there's got to be trust and a communication channel between the support team and the content team. We provide you what should be written. We should be able to provide you the content, and then you craft that. And if there's a silo, then the content team is really just working with R&D and product managers, listening to them on building UI and docs, and not listening to the support team and what are the real problems customers are searching for. Another important factor that I think is newer with the age of AI is headlines, tagging, and consistency in your support documentation. In the old days, you could just keyword search. So if you had a keyword in your documentation, someone keyword search it, that would be fine. But as your documentation grows and it gets larger and AI wants to go pull from a doc that might be 5 pages long, it's more important or more valuable to get just the article, the paragraph, the section where the answer is. And it's much easier to do that if your headlines, your titles, your layering of that content is correct, making sure that the articles are tagged behind the scenes so the AI can use those tags to limit its search and then limit it down even to the text inside. So that's something that content teams need to be aware of, and whoever's running your AI search or your AI chatbot tools should be working with the content team to ensure that those match.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what a great point of view on it. I think there's a lot of the kind of the skill of content that is, consistent. Before AI will be relevant after AI. Kind of information design. How do you make like a logical hierarchy? And then you have to kind of in previous years the big focus is on SEO, right? And how do you like optimize, your search clicks and so on. But there's kind of this Gen AI kind of AI version of SEO that's becoming a really relevant skill as well, kind of layered onto the list of requirements for good content.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and I think it's still true that content is king. Um, yeah. One of the things that you've talked about here, you've mentioned, is this idea of people coming into content through Google, right? So they're trying to solve a problem, or maybe they have a need. Maybe they're a customer, maybe they're not. But they come in through Google search into the knowledge base, right? They're looking at, in the end, at a help article. And that could be a how-to guide, it could be troubleshooting, it could be anything. But there's an opportunity there not only to deflect or to reduce contacts, but also to actually to get new customers, right? To build revenue, to get people in the door. Um, and how do you think about this idea of like measuring the impact of support on revenue?
Wow, I think two completely separate topics. Google search and then tying that to support and revenue. So I'll start with the Google search. I think it's almost a must now that your help center documentation has to be Google searchable. You have to have the right uh, SEO functionality to make sure that when the customer goes to Google, they search their question, they get your website. Because if not, they're going to get their competitors. I mean, we had the same issue at
Right,
Gong when I first started. It was behind a login wall. You had to log in before you got to the documentation, and there's some reason for that. There's some justification. I only want customers getting to my documentation, looking under the hood, seeing bug reports or troubleshooting guides, right? So once we opened that up, we had 10,000 Google hits within probably 3 months of people searching for their answers and seeing it in Google. So, which means customers are seeing us. Um, and then support tying back to revenue, I think leads to retention. I always go back to there are levels of what we're going to measure in support. At the core level, you're measuring reply times and you're measuring resolution times and first contact resolution. There's tons of these metrics that the support organization runs on that tie up into what I call the keystone metrics, which is full resolution time and first reply time, because a customer wants to know they're getting the attention they deserve as quickly as possible and that you're solving their case within a timely manner. And those keystones ultimately impact CSAT. Our customer satisfaction score just tells us how happy our customers are with the support they receive, and happy customers renew.
right.
So if you keep your CSAT high, your customers are happy, they know they're going to get answers when they have problems, they're more likely to renew. So a support organization ultimately rolls up into retention. Getting new business is a little less um, measurable. It's hard to quantify because customers might hear through the grapevine, oh, they have bad support. I'm not going to buy from them. Reach out to you with the question before they purchase and not get a good answer and they choose not to buy. I think that's less relevant. It probably doesn't happen as often as a customer who says, man, I've had the worst interactions with support. I've opened 10 cases. I've never got a resolution, or this case has been open for weeks and nothing's happening. I am not renewing this year.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's definitely it's more of a clear connection with retention for sure. And it's a lot easier to measure once you have, user ID, once you have people into your tool, you can connect the dots, right? And say, okay, this interaction led to a renewal or this interaction led to a churn or whatever. Um, that definitely makes sense. I think, and you're right to push back on, the bringing new people in the door and attributing that. It's definitely harder and it's more of a fuzzy trail. Maybe it makes sense more for technical services, like if you have developer documentation, and then that kind of doubles as like the help center knowledge base. If people come in looking at documentation first, if you're like looking at how to use an API or like some tool, and then you think, okay, this looks easy to use, now I'm going to sign up, right?
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. If they're building something and using your tool, um, then that documentation is going to make a huge difference because people look, right? There might be demos, trials, right? There's people that are playing around in their systems or looking before they spend money with you. And there's a lot of avenues there um, that definitely the content team has a huge impact in. And that's, your marketing as well, your product managers.
Definitely. I wanted to get your thoughts on, a little bit of what you see coming in the future. What do you see coming over the horizon? This year, um, AI is showing no signs of slowing down. There's new models coming out all the time that are getting better and better. What are the opportunities that you see, and maybe some of the new requirements in the landscape?
Um, there, I think data consolidation will be a big one coming in the near future. We've got Slack channels where technical support engineers ask other technical support engineers. There's a channel where the product manager is there and AEs or CSMs or support ask product managers questions. There's a Jira platform where R&D cases are sent for bugs, and there's a Zendesk or a Service Cloud platform where your cases are. There's documentation. There's a Confluence site where people store their insider information, their inside troubleshooting guides, um, and and today, if an agent wants to find an answer to a question or a previous case, or maybe this was solved somewhere else, it's very difficult to do that without a very expensive federated AI-based search platform. So I think we're going to get to a point where that's not possible anymore, and someone's going to develop. Here's a single pane of glass. We've seen some of that, like Glean and these other Yext, and some of those that are getting better at like let put all that stuff in the background and just single pane of glass. You can search and get an answer across all these different platforms. That's going to get more and more valuable as the cases get more complex, as companies grow, and this data just scattered around the world. AI will get better at knowing exactly what you're asking instead of giving you, well, here's 50 different answers to the solution you just asked in 50 different platforms. That's not real helpful because I still have to search through now 50 of these to see if any of those are relevant. So they're going to get better at consolidating that data. They're going to force people to use a single platform for asking questions, and everybody will go to the same way. At least I'm hoping that's where it goes. I think the industry needs to consolidate data better.
Yeah, I think anybody who has worked in an office job, any office job, for at least a few months has experienced the hell of shuffling data, via spreadsheets between a bunch of different tools.
Certainly.
Um, and that seems like we would have solved it by now.
Yeah, we like to. But I think the problem with as an organization just gets to medium size, there's people with budgets in different use cases that buy tools for their individual use case. They start getting used by other organizations. and there's not one person at the top saying, "Wait a minute, let's use one tool." And they try. If you've been using a tool for a couple of years, and then someone comes in and says, "Well, we're actually going to consolidate, get rid of that tool," people scream. Right? They just yell, they panic. No, that's my tool. That's what I use every day. You can't change it. So it's very difficult to consolidate tools after the fact. And very few organizations have the ability, the resources, or the wherewithal to say, let's pick one tool that'll be ready for us when we're 10,000 employees, because all they can afford is a tool right now with their 50 employees.
Yeah, I think that this is this perennial problem of inertia in organizations, whether it's tools or processes, functions. It's always hard to overcome a certain kind of organizational inertia, right? Um, and I wanted to ask a question here about, you know, um, there's all this change that's happening in the CX space. There's all this change that's happening in AI. Technology is always evolving. Um, what are some things that you think always stay the same?
The one constant in all of this is the customer's expectations. I, I don't think that's changed. That the customers expect, if they run into an issue, that you will be able to solve it. Like, there's no exception to that rule. You can't tell a customer like, "Oh, yeah, it doesn't work." Like, that doesn't change over time. If you buy something, you expect it to work. You expect it to, and if you don't know how something works, you should be able to find an answer to how it does work. And that doesn't change. So all the tools and systems behind us are just getting us better at meeting those customer expectations. They're helping us get faster at resolving. They're getting better at consolidating our data. They're making our agents more efficient. They're making our CSMs who are managing these accounts better at prioritizing their book of accounts. All kinds of these things are behind the scenes, ultimately trying to solve the same problem, which is the customer has a question or a problem that they expect to be solved.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, so I think in this landscape, that's definitely not changing. I do think that um, the landscape is moving towards, these AI tools that have a different set of skills required to operate them smoothly and effectively. And one of the roles that I see growing is certainly this support operations role, and specifically focused on optimization of results from an AI tool. Um, you know, and in this space, I think that you've got, deep expertise. I think you're ahead of the curve. Anybody who reads your blog, I think, will be delighted to learn some insights on what they can do, and how to really get good results in this area. Um, do you have any thoughts, any kind of tips or advice for people who are in their career somewhere and they're thinking about the future, and kind of getting ready, building the skills for the future around support operations?
Yeah, certainly. I think the easiest way to get educated on what AI tools can provide is through the vendors themselves. Right? Over the last 8 years, I've met with so many different vendors and seen what their tools can do and heard the pitch. And that's the best place to learn, right? So the first couple of pitches, I was so excited. Wow, this can do everything. I think it's going to make coffee for me in the morning. It's going to solve all my cases. It's going to deflect 85% of the cases that incoming and so forth. And then over time, you realize that's not the case. You implement tools, you do proof of concepts, you actually try the tools and measure results and realize that that's not what it does. So you learn over time through these different vendors what can and can't be done and what's available. So analyzing vendor, like if I was looking for what I should focus on, G2, like a website that lists all the different vendors, AI chatbot has 640 different vendors. Maybe when you can look at just the first top 10 or start to look through the categories of what those vendors are and look at the top list of support related or CX or customer service and look at what those vendors are doing and go analyze their pages, read the white pages, read their white papers, look at their demos, It's a really good place to learn what is available to a support function today, because there's just not a book. There's not somewhere I could say go take this class or read this book, because those education opportunities for how to design AI, how LLMs work, the difference between Anthropic and Llama, and right, that's not as useful for me. I don't really care what's powering behind it. I want to know what's it going to give me as an ops person, what value it's going to provide my support team. And the vendors describe it very well, right? That's their whole pitch. We use AI. Okay, great. But here's the value it's going to give to you. They need to know that because they have to justify finance and justify the payment that you're going to give them to do it. So researching AI vendors in the support space is a really good place to go if you want to get up to speed.
Great. Yeah, I mean that's a good point of view. I think you know, I work for Helpfeel. We are a vendor in the space. Hopefully, people will find something valuable when they read about us. But I'm not here to talk about Helpfeel today. I want to ask you. You mentioned that there is no book, right? If you could have, kind of a dream, book title, and maybe a few words about it, what would be the book that you would like to read, that you'd like to have in this space?
I think the book would a book that analyzed all the functions in a customer support journey, and then where tools, not even necessarily AI based tools, but where tools fit to solve those problems, would be hugely valuable. Something like a support operation manager's tool set. I don't know, something to that effect. That you know, what is out there, what's available, instead of having to go search through web pages and listen to vendor pitches. If someone had put that down, um, it'd be valuable. Understand the metrics, understand what's important to the leadership team, what's important to finance, and then what all these tools can do to impact those metrics and ROI.
Definitely. I'm imagining a visual with like the Batman belt with like all the little gadgets on it,
Yeah, there you go. What's in each one of the
Um,
Batman belt tools? Yeah, that'd be great.
all right. Yeah, Shaun, this is a chance here. I wanted to give you a second to shout out your blog and direct people to what you've got going on. If you want to mention any links or anything like that for people to check out and learn more.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I think you said it earlier. It's cxsupportops.com, and it's just my musing and ramblings about what I've learned over the last 8 years in customer support, hoping to share some knowledge with others and build awareness to my brand. Not monetizing it or anything, it's just information out there to the world.
Great. Yeah, I mean, what a great talk. Thank you so much for coming on today. In the same spirit, these podcasts are free. Yes, I work for a business, but we put this out there just to educate people and to share different perspectives. So it's been great hearing from you and hearing your point of view, Shaun. So
Thanks,
thank
Ben.
you.
It's been a pleasure on. Yeah,
All
appreciate it.
right, we'll see you guys next time on the CX Files. Bye.